Hi, everyone. So I'm Nimrod Lehavi from Simplex, co-founder and CEO, and we're the leading fraudless payment processing provider. Okay. So payments need to evolve. As you've heard people before me speaking and after me as well probably discussing payments. Payment is an evolving ecosystem, and so is the fraud ecosystem. I'll touch a bit more about that later. As Marco mentioned, currently we're mostly focused in the cryptocurrency world. We're supporting most of the leading brands. So most likely if you had purchased cryptocurrencies with your credit cards, most likely it was by us. And the way we look at payment processing in general is that online payments is a broken system. The fact that merchants need to think about fraud and evaluate the risks when it comes to payment doesn't make sense at all. That's why we chose, rather than the traditional approach of being either a processing company or a fraud mitigation company, combine between the two and provide synergetic value. So it's a classic case where 1 + 1 = 3. So fraud, as it's usually discussed, probably in all the discussions you've heard about online fraud, is usually only focusing on stolen financials. And it's only about 15% of general fraud cases. So stolen credit cards or stolen bank details, it's a very small area in the fraud space. There are multiple other cases like identity frauds, account takeovers, and very, very elaborate attack vectors that hackers use in order to steal money from ordinary people out there. And it's mostly a result of us being online more of the time. I'm guessing all of you have Facebook accounts, all of you have Twitter accounts, all of you are leaving your digital footprint all day long online. So it's much easier to impersonate you and much easier to steal your information. In the cryptocurrency space, in most places, you're also required to provide your KYC information, meaning your passport, sometimes your proof of residence. So this information also becomes kind of available in the wild, and it becomes even easier to do that. Also, important to note friendly fraud. In case you're not familiar with that, friendly fraud is basically liar buyer. It means that I made a purchase and I'm not happy with the product. Instead of discussing it with customer support, I just issue a chargeback. I just request from the credit card provider my money back. Usually I get it. And it's something which is very hard to fight. And more users are choosing that path just because it's easier rather than it's actually the case, meaning that they've made the transaction, they probably got the product as well, and still they do a chargeback. So we've chose a very different approach. We're providing a holistic solution. We're covering the checkout from the beginning of the process until after the end of the process. So from the moment the user decides to make a purchase and until after the purchase was complete, even if it ended up in a chargeback, we're still there. We're able to find very high correlation between transactions that ends in a friendly chargeback, in a friendly fraud, or a liar buyer case, and support calls. So for example, about 50% of the transactions that end up in a friendly fraud, meaning that the user who's issuing the chargeback has actually completed the transaction. Usually, they try to discuss it with the support, but they didn't get what they want, so they ended up doing it with doing a chargeback on the transaction. Also, what we're doing is we're changing the flow depending on the parameters that we're collecting during the course of the transaction. So we're able to make changes in the flow, in the interface, in the user experience, while the user is still within the transaction. And that way we're able to reduce the fraud rate, but also increase the conversion, which most other companies are usually are not able to do, because usually companies handling fraud are doing it more in a API manner, meaning they're receiving all the information and then just replying, while we're actively making changes in the flow of the transaction. So, as mentioned, we're working for about 5 years now, focused mainly on the cryptocurrency ecosystem. 2017, as you might know, was a very strong year in the ecosystem, not so much with 2018, but now it's picking up again. We've processed over $1 billion. We have about 80 integrations live in the wild with cryptocurrency companies mostly. We're also working with Payoneer. Yuval was just here. And up until now, zero merchant fraud loss, meaning that we're protecting 100% of the transactions for our merchants. If we've made a mistake during the processing of some transaction, it ends up in a chargeback, we're liable, we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're paying up. And in high-risk verticals, even more important, so in some cases, if you reach a too high fraud chargeback level, you just get terminated by the credit card company. So it's an even more important metric, the fact that none of our merchants was terminated by the credit card companies. So this is just a variety of our clientele. Everybody's taking pictures, I see. So it's a good slide. Most of them, again, except from Payoneer, are in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And now going forward, we're advancing in two axes. One is additional products to the ecosystem where we're leading. So in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, we've started with fraudless credit card processing. We're continuing to ACH, which is also a problematic way to transfer funds. Also, some cases of fraud. We're moving to local payment methods, payouts, which we just launched a couple of days ago. But also, it's important to understand e-commerce as a whole. If you take and slice e-commerce in general into verticals, and you order them all by the risk for fraud, well, vertically. So at the top, you'll see cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrencies is the highest possible fraud risk to manage. So if we are able to encapsulate this ecosystem like we do and lead it with fraudless payment processing, we're better than the hackers, we're better than the potential competition, but hackers are here to hack, they're here to work. They're not gonna change their job title. So basically they will kind of drift to a lower fraud risk vertical, let's say digital assets. Once they move there, they create our next market. We're better than them, they're usually better than the competition, so we drift to that one. And later on, cash equivalents, virtual goods, and lower in this column of fraudulent prone verticals. So slowly but surely, we're going to make progress both on the axis of additional products and on additional verticals, winning due to the synergetic value of the services and the user base and the client base. So I'll just finish with a very cool slide. We took a snapshot from the darknet. Everybody here is familiar with the darknet? Raise hands. Okay, so not too many. So basically the darknet is a filthy environment, completely anonymous. Everybody's providing the kind of picture of the iceberg. So above the water is the regular internet, which we all know and use every day. And the darknet is a much bigger, completely anonymous, rather disgusting environment. All the hackers are there. They're buying and selling stolen credit cards, stolen identities. And something we stumbled into in one of the hacker forums is this. Someone has stolen a bunch of credit cards and is asking, where should I go and buy Bitcoin with all the stolen credit cards and identity? And someone else is responding, well, go to the Simplex website, check all their partners, and go someplace else, because there's pretty much no way you'll manage to go through their systems. So had I thought about it, I would have written it myself, but still think it's a very good slide. Thank you very much.